I'm fascinated by an archaeological term called deep time, which is a way of describing time physically as a compression of civilizations. So it's basically life in the past which has been compressed underfoot. I suppose it's the future of all surfaces and civilizations. So I wanted to make a juxtaposition, a vertical juxtaposition. The collage tradition, the way we read, the way we make cartoons, it's usually a left-right juxtaposition. A triptych in a church, it's a left to right. And I thought it'd be interesting to make a juxtaposition that was vertical. So what you see in my sculptures is a juxtaposition of what's above and what's below. I wanted the conversation to be vertical between the past and the current times. Well, the piece behind me, Pedestrian Island, Deptford, is 3 miles from where I live. And when I left the northeast of England, which is a rather beautiful place, and ended up in Deptford, a really ugly place, I promised myself that I wouldn't live here for very long in this neighborhood, but I did. And 30 years later, I revisited the thought that I'd had on the very first day I arrived in London, and I thought, damn, I'm still here 30 years later, and I promised myself I wouldn't live in this ugly neighborhood. So I thought it would be interesting to revisit that thought. So even though this place could be everywhere and nowhere, it means something quite significant to me personally. That's kind of the reason I wanted to make the sculpture, to revisit a thought I had 30 years previously. But I do think the object is ubiquitous, and I think anyone can appreciate what an island is. If you were standing on that object, you'd stand there forever. There's nowhere to go, the world has vanished. And that was my way of trying to say, I'm stuck here in Deptford. Most of us want to be somewhere else most of the time. But on this, you can't leave. So we can imagine being on it. But if someone else is standing on there, a little figure, little model figure, then it's him standing there, not you. So I tend not to put figures in the work because it leads to like an open door for the viewer to project themselves there. One could project oneself onto an island that one wouldn't want to leave. So then I started making a series of works called The Architecture of Pleasure, where perhaps one could imagine being, one would not want to leave. It's almost the opposite of the urban pedestrian island. So you can use the idea of an island both ways. The cinema in particular is a place where stories are told in light. So in that piece, the vertical juxtaposition is between communication in light, the cinema and the script. The vertical juxtaposition is with this mute earth, which has nothing to offer in terms of communication. So I'm trying to juxtapose the idea of a story told in light versus darkness and muteness.